Greetings mga ka-spacers natin out there from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. And sa lahat ng ating mga ka-spacers out there worldwide and netwide, magandang araw po sa inyong lahat. This is your ka-spacer and space commander, Professor Jun Cajigal. So for this episode mga ka-spacers, we will continue with our discussion of is there life beyond planet Earth? And in this episode, we will be focusing on the importance of water because we know from the previous episode that the search for life outside or beyond planet Earth, mga ka-spacers, is the search for water. So we will be tackling that question, what makes water so unique? What makes water so special that it can sustain life? And what are some of the properties of water that enables it to support life? So ayan po yung ating pag-uusapan dito sa episode na ito. So before we proceed to the details of our discussion, probably we will have to take a look at the structure of a water molecule. Now we know mga ka-spacers that water is composed of 1 part oxygen and 2 parts hydrogen, hence the chemical formula H2O. And the bonding between oxygen and hydrogen is what we call a polar covalent bond. Now polar covalent bonding mga ka-spacers involves unequal sharing of electrons between atoms. So because of this unequal sharing of electrons between atoms, at one end you have a partial negative charge and at the opposite end of the molecule you have a partial positive charge. And that is a water molecule. A water molecule mga ka-spacers is a polar molecule because oxygen is partially negative and hydrogen is partially positive. Now why is that mga ka-spacers? Now bakit ganun? What makes the water molecule polar? Now oxygen being larger pulls the electrons towards itself. Electrons are pulled towards the oxygen atom. And that's what we call electronegativity. Oxygen is more electronegative than hydrogen. Why? Because oxygen has the tendency to pull electrons towards itself. And because electrons are pulled towards the oxygen atom, oxygen develops a partial negative charge and hydrogen develops a partial positive charge. So that's a water molecule mga ka-spacers. Water is a polar molecule again because oxygen being a larger atom and having more protons, the oxygen atom pulls or attracts the shared electrons towards itself. And that's what we call electronegativity. So the oxygen pulls the shared electrons, so the shared electrons, they stay longer in the oxygen atom. So that makes the oxygen atom partially negative. While at the opposite end, hydrogen becomes partially positive. And because of this polarity of a water molecule, the tendency now is for the positive pole of one water molecule is attracted to the negative pole, that's the oxygen end of a water molecule of another water molecule, as you could see in this diagram mga ka-spacers. So the positive pole of one molecule of water is attracted to the negative pole of the other water molecule. And this bonding between water molecules is known as hydrogen bonding. Alright, so all the water molecules are bonded together. The positive end of one water molecule is attracted or bonded to the negative end of another water molecule. And this is hydrogen bonding of water molecules, mga ka-spacers. And because of this hydrogen bonding of water molecules, water exhibits certain unique properties that enables it to support life. So mga ka-spacers, the search for life outside planet Earth has become the search for water because water exhibits unique properties that enables it to sustain life. So at this point, mga ka-spacers, let us now enumerate some of these properties of water that makes it so special. And one of the important properties of water is cohesion. Now, cohesion refers to the attraction of molecules for other molecules of the same kind, or in other words, the attraction of like molecules. And one good example to exhibit cohesion of water molecules is by adding drops of water onto this penny. Now, as drops of water are added onto the penny, the cohesive forces between the water molecules keeps the water from falling off. That's why we can add several drops of water onto this penny before the water breaks. So isn't that fascinating, mga ka-spacers? Another unique property of water due to its hydrogen bonding ability is what we call adhesion. Adhesion refers to the attraction of molecules of one kind for molecules of a different kind, or in short, the attraction of unlike molecules. And one good example to exhibit adhesion of water molecules is the transport of water through the xylem vessel wall. So the water molecules are attracted to the xylem vessel wall, and this attraction of water molecules to the xylem enables it to be transported upwards. And this is what we call capillary action. And because of the capillary action, water is transported upwards through the xylem. Again, this is due to cohesion and adhesion of water molecules. Polar water molecules tend to stick together due to hydrogen bonding, and adhesion, the water molecules tend to stick to the xylem vessel wall. And again, because of this working together, cohesion and adhesion, water tends to crawl up the narrow tubes, and this is what we call capillary action, mga ka-spacers. The narrower the tube, the higher the same mass of water that can climb upwards. And this is the principle behind the transport of water upwards through the xylem of the stem. And the transport of water upwards is explained through the cohesion tension theory. Cohesion between water molecules creates what we call a water chain effect. As molecules are removed from the column by evaporation, or what we call transpiration in botany, in the leaves, more are drawn upward. So to illustrate the cohesion tension theory, let's take a look at this simple illustration of the xylem with water. Now, as water molecules evaporate through the leaves, the adjacent water molecules are being pulled upwards. So, because of this and the attraction of water molecules through cohesion and adhesion, this will allow molecules to be pulled upwards. So to put it simply, mga ka-spacers, in the leaves you have transpiration of water, meaning water turns into gas. And as water evaporates, or as water turns into gas, mga ka-spacers, the adjacent water molecules are being pulled upwards. And that will pull the other adjacent molecules all the way down from the roots. So as water turns into gas through transpiration in the leaves, the adjacent water molecules are being pulled upwards. And that is how water is transported up from the roots to the stem and to the leaves. So this is cohesion and adhesion working together in order to transport water up from the roots to the stem and to the leaves. So isn't that fascinating? That's the so-called cohesion tension theory. Cohesion between the water molecules replaces the water by pulling the adjacent water molecule up the xylem. As the column of water is hard to break, this pull is felt down the entire column of water through the xylem vessel. And each water molecule is pulled from the xylem. Another water molecule is pulled up, from the roots, then up to the stem. So that is how water is transported up from the roots to the stem and to the leaves of plants. So this can be explained through the so-called cohesion tension theory. The pulling force is passed from water molecule to water molecule all the way down the plant. So isn't that fascinating? And this is how water is pulled up through the plant by means of transpiration. So as I have explained a while ago, as water evaporates from the leaves through transpiration, the adjacent water molecules are pulled upwards. Again, because all the water molecules are attracted to one another due to hydrogen bonding. So that is how water is pulled up from the roots to the stem and to the leaves through the cohesion tension theory due to cohesion and adhesion of water molecules. Alright mga ka-spacers, so isn't that fascinating? Alright, now another important property of water due to its hydrogen bonding ability is the so-called surface tension. Now, surface tension is the ability of water molecules to form a thin film on the surface. Now, since all the water molecules are attracted to one another and to the sides of it, water forms a thin film that allows it to support objects like this needle. Now, all the water molecules are attracted on the surface, producing the thin film that will allow this paper clip to literally float on water, as you could see in this photo. So you could see the thin film on the surface of water due to the hydrogen bonding ability of all the water molecules, forming that thin film that allows that paper clip to literally float on water. And this will enable also certain insects like this spider to utilize that thin film and allows it to literally walk on water. So that is surface tension. Now, another property of water due to its hydrogen bonding ability, mga ka-spacers, is that water has a high heat capacity. Now, having a high heat capacity means that water can absorb a great deal of heat. Water has much higher capacity to store energy, heat energy, than most common materials. The relative small amount of water absorbs a great deal of heat, mga ka-spacers, for a correspondingly small temperature rise. So, ang ibig lang sabihin nito, mga ka-spacers, talagang water can absorb a great deal of heat. And this can be demonstrated by filling this balloon with water. Then ilagay nyo sa kandila. So you will be amazed to observe na yung balloon na yan will not pop. Hindi yan puputok. Because there is water inside and water is absorbing the heat from that candle. So hindi puputok yung balloon because water absorbs the heat water as a high heat capacity. And because water exhibits high heat capacity, this allows our planet to moderate its temperature through our oceans and seas, mga ka-spacers. The oceans and seas, they act as a tremendous heat sink, to moderate or regulate our global temperature. So can you imagine kung walang tubig yung mundo natin? And we are close to the sun, so talagang tataas ang temperatura ng mundo natin. Now, because of our oceans and seas, yung karagatan natin, they act as a tremendous heat sink, to regulate our global temperature. So isn't that fascinating, mga ka-spacers? So mga ka-spacers, before we continue with our discussion on the properties of water due to its hydrogen bonding ability, kung meron po kayong mga katanungan or mga comments or reactions dito po sa ating pinag-uusapan ngayong araw na ito on the properties of water, please feel free to type in your questions, your comments, your reactions dito po sa ating comment section below. And I would like to hear from you, mga ka-spacers. Gusto kong malaman kung kayo po ay buhay na buhay pa at gising na gising sa ating discussion ngayon about the properties of water dito sa ating episode ng CosmoQuest. So just type in your reactions or your comments, your questions dito po sa ating comment section. And kung meron po kayong mga pa-shoutout, mga ka-spacers, just type in your name and your location para alam po namin kung hanggang saan po nakakaabot ang ating live stream ngayong araw na ito. And mga ka-spacers, napaka-importanteng batas na i-like natin at i-share po natin ang itong episode ng CosmoQuest so that we could reach more people, we could reach more students para ma-inspire naman po sila to be engaged in the sciences. Alright mga ka-spacers, so like and share itong ating episode ngayon sa CosmoQuest. Alright, so ituloy po natin yung ating kwentuhan about the properties of water due to its hydrogen bonding ability. Alright, now another important property of water due to its hydrogen bonding ability is that water expands as it freezes. So I'm sure alam natin ito mga ka-spacers, kumuha po tayo ng glass container at punuin po natin ng tubig up to the brim. Then ilagay po natin yan sa loob ng freezer. And you will be amazed in a few hours as water solidifies into ice, mag-e-expand po yan at mababasag po yung glass container. So water expands when it freezes. Ngayon bakit kaya, So because of the hydrogen bonding ability of water, water is less dense as it solidifies into ice. And because water becomes less dense, ice floats on water. Since ice is less dense, mga ka-spacers, it forms on the surface at first. And as water freezes, it releases heat to the water below and insulates it. Kaya po mga ka-spacers, kung mapapansin po ninyo, yung ating mga oceans and lakes, they don't freeze solid. So yung surface lang po yung nasusolidify, pero yung ilalim po niyan beneath the icy sheet, water remains in liquid form. So very important to mga ka-spacers, ice forms only on the surface of the water, but beneath that icy sheet, water remains in liquid form. So when the temperature of the atmosphere falls below 0 degrees, mga ka-spacers, the water at the surface gradually freezes to ice. But the water underneath that icy layer remains liquid at 4 degrees Celsius. And because of this, aquatic life can survive in extremely cold conditions. So very important tong property of water mga ka-spacers. So water forms on the surface but beneath that icy sheet, water remains in liquid form that will enable aquatic life to survive in such cold conditions. And lastly mga ka-spacers, another important property of water due to its hydrogen bonding ability is that water acts as a versatile solvent. So hindi po universal solvent ang tubig. Ibig sabihin nito, water can dissolve almost anything, no? Almost anything, hindi po lahat. That's why water acts as a versatile solvent. Water can dissolve almost anything. So yung substance that is dissolved in water is known as the solute, and the substance that dissolves the solute is the solvent. So water acts as a versatile solvent. Many substances like itong sugar can be dissolved in water. That is that their molecules separate from each other, becoming surrounded by water molecules. So that is water being a versatile solvent mga ka-spacers. So those are the properties of water due to its hydrogen bonding ability. And because of the hydrogen bonding ability of water, water exhibits certain properties that enables it to support life. Now, what are the other necessities for life other than water mga ka-spacers? Now, another necessity for life is the so-called habitable zone or yung tinatawag po natin na Goldilocks zone. Alright, so ano bang ibig sabihin nitong habitable zone? So the habitable zone of a planet is the distance from the sun that can support life. So yung distansya natin from the sun is just right for life to exist. And napakaswerte po ng ating mundo. The Earth is lucky to be in the right place for life to exist. So yung distansya natin from the sun is just right. Hindi tayo po yung malapit sa araw kagaya ng Venus. So if that's the case, kung malapit po tayo sa araw, our oceans and seas would boil up. No, and pag wala pong tubig, talagang life would be impossible. And kung malayo naman po tayo sa araw, like for example sa Mars, then po yung liquid water natin will solidify and mahihirapan po mag-survive yung mga living things natin dito. So our planet is lucky to be in the right distance from the sun. We are not too close to the sun and we are not too far from the sun. Our distance from the sun is just right. The habitable zone mga ka-spacers corresponds to the range of distances when liquid water can exist on the planet's surface. So yung distansya natin mga ka-spacers is just right for water to remain in liquid form. Kasi kung malapit po tayo, water will just evaporate, no? And kung malayo naman po tayo sa araw, water will solidify. So tamang-tama lang yung distansya natin from the sun. Water remains in liquid form and that's what we call the habitable zone or yung tinatawag po natin na Goldilocks zone. Part of the hunt for water on other worlds means looking for planets orbiting a certain distance from their stars. And marami na pong nakita yung Kepler Space Telescope na mga ibang mundo, mga exoplanets na tamang-tama lang po yung distansya nila sa kanilang mga stars. Planets in the zone are neither too hot nor too cold. Conditions could be just right, no, for liquid water to exist. And meron na pong nakita ang Kepler Space Telescope na mga planets beyond our solar system na nasa habitable zone nila. So isn't that interesting and fascinating, no, mga ka-spacers? So very important yung habitable zone. And ang isa pang tanong in relation to this, can extreme environments support living things? Now the answer is yes. Even you have extreme environmental conditions, life can go on. So may mga living things na tinatawag natin ay extremophiles. So these are living things that can tolerate and survive extreme conditions. So ito yung tinatawag natin extremophiles or part of the so-called 𝗓𝗍𝗥𝗘𝗧𝗏. So there is a certain group of living things called 𝗓𝗍𝗥𝗘𝗧𝗏 that can survive and tolerate such extreme environmental conditions. Like psychrophiles, these are microorganisms that can live in cold environments like ice, yan, and the Arctic and Antarctic regions. Yung mga psychrophiles na yan. Another group of living things, mga 𝗓𝗍𝗥𝗘𝗧𝗏, are the so-called thermophiles. These thermophiles, these are microbes that can live in very hot environments like deep sea vents and volcanic lakes. So isn't it fascinating, mga ka-spacers? Now another group of microbes called alkaliphiles can live in basic or alkali environments like soda lakes. Other microbes such as halophiles can live in very salty environments like salt lakes and salt mines. And also we have microbes like acidophiles that can live in acidic environments like sulfur springs. So yan po, mga ka-spacers, yan yung mga tinatawag natin extremophiles. They are under this group of organisms called 𝗓𝗍𝗥𝗘𝗧𝗏. Now another group of microbes that you'll find this really fascinating is the so-called 𝗓𝗏𝗧𝗥𝗢𝗕 radiodurans. And talagang ma-amaze po kayo dito sa 𝗓𝗏𝗧𝗥𝗢𝗕 radiodurans, mga ka-spacers. This is one of the most surprising cases of tolerance to extreme environmental conditions. Itong bacteria na ito called 𝗓𝗏𝗧𝗥𝗢𝗕 radiodurans, because 𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗧 can tolerate radiation. 𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗧 radiodurans is the world's most radiation resistant organism. And ito yung makikita sa mga cooling jackets of nuclear reactors. So isn't that fascinating that such microorganism called 𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗧 radiodurans can withstand extreme radiation? And another organism that you'll find it really fascinating is the so-called water bears or the tardigrades. Now these tardigrades or water bears are typically 0.5 millimeters in length. And mga ka-spacers, you'll find this really fascinating that such organism, itong mga tardigrades na to or the water bears, can survive virtually in any extreme conditions, even in the vacuum of space. Itong mga tardigrades na to or the water bears, they can make a living anywhere on the planet, in the frigid peaks of the tallest mountains, kasi malamig doon, kayang-kaya nilang mabuhay dyan. In the cauldrons of erupting volcanoes na napakainit, and in the deep ocean vents on the bottom of the sea. You can imagine yung extreme pressure dun sa ilalim ng dagat. These organisms, to mga tardigrades, can make a living anywhere on Earth. So talagang survivor itong mga water bears or the tardigrades. They can really exist anywhere on the planet, even in the vacuum of space, mga ka-spacers. Alright? So ito yung mga tinatawag natin na extremophiles. So these are microorganisms, or like itong tardigrades na ito, they can tolerate extreme environmental conditions. Ngayon ang tanong, bakit ko nabanggit ito? Now you can imagine the planet Mars. Planet Mars, as we know from mga space probes na bumisita na ngayon dyan. So ang Mars talaga, it's an extreme environment na natirhan. Alright? Walang oxygen, so Mars is bombarded with UV rays, radiation from the sun. Walang oxygen, and hindi pa natin alam kung talagang may tubig. So napaka-extreme ng conditions on the planet Mars. So that means kung extreme siya, pwedeng mabuhay itong mga living things na to, like the tardigrades. Lagyan mo ng tardigrades sa surface ng Mars, baka pwede silang mabuhay. Or even 𝗔𝗦𝗧𝗥𝗢𝗕𝗜𝗓𝗏, baka pwede po silang mabuhay doon. Alright, but again, there are other factors to consider. So what I'm trying to say is, kung itong mga ito, itong mga living things na ito, no, that they can tolerate extreme conditions, baka lang pwede silang mabuhay sa ibang planet, like the planet Mars, or sa Europa, or sa surface ng Titan. So kaya nabanggit ko po ito, itong mga extremophiles na ito. Alright po mga ka-spacers. Now again, life as we know it on Earth requires liquid water, energy like the sun, nutrients, and nabanggit po natin kanina yung habitable zone to survive. And alam po natin na may mga living things that can tolerate extreme environmental conditions. Ito yung mga extremophiles, like yung 𝗔𝗦𝗧𝗥𝗢𝗕𝗬𝗓 or yung tardigrades, no? So they can withstand extreme conditions. Now, what about life as we don't know it? So ayan po yung ating pag-uusapan in our next episode. So in our next episode, mga ka-spacers, we will be discussing the possibility of life dito sa ating solar system, like the possibility of life on the planet Mars, the possibility of life on Europa, on Titan, and Enceladus. So ayan po yung ating episode. Yan. So antabayanan nyo po yan mga ka-spacers. So bago po tayo magtapos, again, napaka-importanteng batas ito to please like and share itong ating episode so that we could reach more people, lalong-lalo na po yung mga estudyante, so that they would be engaged in the sciences. So please like and share. Also like and share yung aming Facebook page ng Skywatchers Society of Las Piñas. And mga ka-spacers, pakisabit nyo na rin din yung aking Facebook page, The Science Guy Ka-Spacers Channel. And please like and subscribe sa aking YouTube channel, The Science Guy, Prof Jun Cajigal, para marami po tayong matulungan na mga tao, lalong-lalo na po yung mga estudyante, para ma-inspire sila to be engaged in the sciences. So hanggang dito na lang po tayo sa ating episode. So again mga ka-spacers, huwag niyo pong kalilimutan, like and share itong ating video. So shout out sa inyong lahat na nakatutok po ngayon sa ating episode, and shout out din po sa mga volunteers ko sa Skywatchers Society of Las Piñas, and sa mga Skywatchers dyan, no? Shout out po sa inyong lahat. So hanggang dito na lang po tayo. This is your ka-spacer and space commander, Professor Jun Cajigal, saying live long and prosper. And always remember mga ka-spacers to always keep your space. So see you in our next episode. Goodbye everybody!